But first, the Yes campaign might have more people out in the streets, but there's no shortage of Australians ready to stand up and be counted for keeping our constitution colourblind. Last night in Adelaide, there was a big rally to launch the No campaign in that state, and unsurprisingly, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price was again the star. Understandably, though, she was emotional, talking about the abuse of women and girls, especially in remote communities. Abuse that powerful Indigenous leaders have preferred to ignore for years or pretend that it was somehow the result of colonial or intergenerational trauma, when it's actually about perpetrators today and deaf ears in Canberra.
I was simply a vessel. I was a vessel for the women sitting in that room, the cousin of a young girl murdered hanging from the tree. They're the voices this bloody voice to Parliament will ignore.
I remind my viewers too, we interviewed some of those guests on the show. They were women she took to Canberra that no Labor politician would meet with. Now, there are just no excuses for violence against women and girls or for any domestic abuse. And the idea that this will be fixed by a voice in Canberra, dominated by the same Indigenous elites who've been talking to politicians for years, is just wrong. There's no doubt that Aboriginal people suffered in the aftermath of settlement, but there's also no doubt that the coming of Western civilisation at least started to give Aboriginal women the same sorts of rights and equality that was also delivered to other Australian women. The problem with the self-determination agenda that's largely set Indigenous policy since the Whitlam era is that it's tended to make excuses for culture, whether that's sorry business that can take kids out of school for weeks on end, or men lording it over their families. Of course, Aboriginal people should be proud of their heritage and free to make the most of it. But it's not government's business to foster Aboriginality. It's the job of government to give everyone the opportunity to make the most of their lives as proud Australians. As Price knows only too well, saying no to this divisive voice is a way to make a fresh start, to vote against separatism, and to encourage Aboriginal people to integrate into mainstream society, just as generations of migrants do. Not to lose who they are or their heritage, but to keep contact with the broader Australian populace as a full-fledged member of Team Australia. Last night's Adelaide rally also brought out an ugly side to the Yes campaign, with protesters hurling abuse at people entering the venue. Here's some of the footage recorded by South Australian Senator Alex Antic.
This is your Australia. Thank you, Labor government. Thanks for the unity.
Even Yes supporter, SA Premier Peter Malinauskas, felt the need to rebuke Yes campaigners for going over the top.
If the people shouting and protesting and calling people names at the convention centre last night think they're changing anyone's mind, they obviously don't really understand human behaviour very well. I don't know about you, Pemba. I've never persuaded anyone by calling them a name. So
No.
It's crazy stuff, and I certainly don't think it reflects where the majority of Australians are at in the course of this debate.
Now, rebuke them he should, unlike the weak words of Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney, who couldn't bring herself to directly call out Marsha Langton's "you're either a racist or you're stupid" implication. For constitutional change that the Prime Minister said was just a matter of being polite, there's been plenty of ugliness, and nearly all of it's come from the Yes camp. Of course, no one likes to be disagreed with. But instead of giving voters the detail they should have been able to expect, and instead of accepting that there were perfectly reasonable grounds for scepticism about entrenching race in our constitution via this voice, that only people of one race could be a part of, Yes supporters have accused their opponents of being racist. Whichever way this vote goes, there will be many unhappy voters on the morning of October 15. But at least if the answer is no, that division won't then be entrenched forever in our Constitution.